So, Distractible. Distractible is this podcast with three of my favorite YouTubers in it. Markiplier, My Skirm, and Lord Minion 777, or just Lord Minion. I am technically unfamiliar enough that I believe he says both. Regardless. It's a podcast. It's actually what originally got me into podcasts. I wouldn't really appreciate podcasts as anything like I just thought it was for old women and of no real impact to me. I did not have any interest in podcasts until Distractible existed. I learned about it through a promotion in one of Markiplier's videos, and this isn't your casual white men podcast, which I think is a thing. It's a these people, Markiplier, Mark, Bob, and Wade, those are their names. I should mention that. They've entertained together. They've done a live stage show for improv. They are not far off from the idea of podcasting. Like they are not. They don't have no reason to make a podcast. In fact, they have run a podcast before, the Three Peens podcast. But Distractible is really great. Ever since the beginning, it felt to me as if they sort of slowly dipped, and then they came back strong with just a string of very, very funny episodes. And then they dipped again, and then it was strong again. And the question is, do I tell somebody to start in the middle of one of their stronger runs? I would recommend Riddles and Rhymes as the funniest because it made me guffaw. It made me laugh out loud. But that isn't necessarily where I want somebody to start for the podcast because they aren't always funny. Not to say I mean they aren't always gut-bustingly funny. What I expect from Distractible is good, wholesome laughs, not things that overtake my lungs and cause me breathing problems, but just fine, good humor. To listen to the car and smile. They're smilers. Most of Distractible episodes are good, big smilers, and I like that. The point being, the very idea of quantifying this, how their quality changed over the years, that interested me. I like quantifying things. I don't know why, but I do a lot. When I was young, I used to do long division for fun, but that doesn't matter. I'm not even that big a fan of math. I don't want to go into math, but I like quantifying things. I like stats and polls and numbers like that, and graphs. Love graphs. Can't get enough of graphs. Love graphs, just inherently. So what I did is go back through all of the Distractible episodes one by one and figure out and give them all a rating, 1 to 10. 10 being the fucking best. I gave Riddles and Rhymes an 11 because I wanted to. And I at the end of the day, this doesn't have to be the best math in the world. I felt that episode deserved an 11. So I went back through, and I was like, okay, why don't I prove to myself my theory that they started high and curved and that they do this in terms of quality? Why don't I just prove that to myself and rate all of the things and put those in a graph? And that way, if the ratings start going low, then we know that they're decreasing in quality, at least in my eyes, which is as partially as I can judge it. This was mostly for me. I wasn't like, oh, what is comedy? Because that's not what they do. in the podcast. They talk about themselves and their interests. They aren't always hilarious. In fact, some of the times they talk about things like the death of a pet or the birth of Bob's son, and those are huge. Like, don't look at me to be like, but it wasn't funny, I'm gonna rate it low. No. My point being, I'm gonna go grab the graph. All right. I have my graph here. There are 297 episodes of Distractible as of the moment I am recording this. That's almost 300. They started weekly, and somewhere after they did their transition to video on Spotify, they started doing bi-weekly, Mondays and Fridays. They also have put out a bevy of bonus episodes that were just B-roll from some of their like warm-ups. I don't technically understand what the mentality was with calling them mini episodes. They vary, and they're great. I love them. I love them dearly. A lot of the bonus episodes are really just fun because... All right. I'm going to show you the graph before I make any more declarations. You should be able to see the graph now. Now, you're really supposed to be focusing on the blue line. The blue line is the real averaging. I believe it's every 10 episodes an average that changes, because the red line, as you can see, fluctuates a lot more than would be like useful for gauging ups and downs. What I discovered with Distractible is that it technically has peaks and valleys, yes, but it still goes through those pretty quickly. Like, the valleys can feel like a lot because they talk about them during the recordings and like get it in your head that, oh, we're having a bad set of episodes, but they really aren't that huge a lot of the time. And very, very responsibly, they're able to turn out at least level 9 episodes. Level 9 is definitely, probably level 8 showed up the most, but level 9, I can always rely on the boys for some level 9, and that'll always prevent them from sinking way, way down. As you can see with the blue, again, it got more complicated as soon as they were doing two episodes a week. This isn't very... It doesn't say a lot. I'm gonna be honest. It doesn't, and that's a shame. But what the things it does say is that, yes, basically before video started, and I'm not saying that adding video made it worse, I'm saying that that's a good measurement, because it's frankly about halfway through their career of having Distractible, they added video. So that's just a good way to quantify that. As I was saying, before that, they were doing rather well. That's definitely clear. And in the wake of video, they did pretty well, and then since then have been middling, basically. That's the simplest way to put it. Some notable things on the graph. You can see the highest peak is, in fact, riddles and rhymes, and that was surrounded by some incredible, some also very high-quality episodes. Let me actually see if I can just go find which ones those are, because surely that is a number I have. Yeah, it was surrounded by $1 Million Butt from Mark, which I found was of 9, and Bread from Wade, another iconic episode. So that was definitely a high point, and you can see in the wake of that on the blue line, just a big valley, just because of the fact that they, just how numbers work, they weren't hitting those 9s and 11s anymore, therefore, of course, there's a valley. September 30th episode got a 3. Yes, it was basically a bonus episode about, and it was just full of the grossest, it was like the cursed Distractible episode, and I just don't like listening to gross things. Like, they occasionally, like, indulge in a little of the less savory humor. They get all gooey, and it gets gross sometimes at Distractible, and that was just a terrible, terrible episode that I just didn't like. It got a 3. I didn't like it. Not one little bit. But other than that, you can see that they don't often hit 5s. 5s are basically the standard for, as long as they were trying, they basically get a 5, if I'm gonna be honest. They have a natural chemistry, they banter well. If they're not really trying, if they put no effort into making any big funny jokes, or their episodes are not creative, then it's still an easy 5 for them. Going lower than 5 is a sign that they're actively doing something wrong, and that's not something they do often. And then 6 doesn't happen often, but it's just a episode I feel slightly less than passionate about. 7 is a good episode with maybe a good joke or a good premise that I think they should return to. I should explain how the podcast works, because it isn't just them talking. They try to bring a topic to the table every time based on who the host is. And the host awards points and decides between the other two who's going to be the host next turn to bring a topic and to stimulate conversation as the host. It's just a fun way to shake it up. It doesn't mean everything in the world. They don't stick to a very strict set of rules for it. At one point, Markiplier named himself like the host 3 times in a row. It's not something that necessarily requires just all your attention. It's not something. Well, it is. It is imperative to the structure of the show, because it gives a clear person in power, and I think really strengthens the show to have a person who brings something to talk about. And sometimes there have been nothing to talk about, but that's just the host saying, I have nothing to talk about, and it still works out all right. 7s, 8s maybe. But the reason I told you that is that the host basically dictates how good the episode is, right? Because they inspire, regardless of how much they controlled it, they inspire what direction their episode goes. So what I also did is took my ratings of all the episodes and carefully assigned them to when each guy hosted. So as you can see here, I also counted how many times they actually won. And again, won, like, there's no strict rules to that. It's not reliable. Again, Markiplier named himself host 3 times, but a host in this case, the title is They Led an Episode. They've all the 3 of them have led episodes basically the same amount. Bob has led an episode 95 times, Wade has led an episode 93 times, and Mark has run an episode 92 times. Of those episodes, Bob's total rating of all the episodes 1 through 10 plus each other was 702, which is far above Wade with 664 and Mark with 644. And I know that's not easy to think about. Like, that isn't, you don't really, you say, oh, Bob must be a better host because he hosts about the same amount as the other 2, and yet he has a significantly bigger score. I averaged it because I wanted to be exact. And basically, the boys are vaguely equal hosts. Bob takes the cake with a 3.8. At his average episodes are 7.39. That's honestly, the fact that they're in the 7s is lower than I expected, but the numbers don't lie, so I'm not gonna judge. 7.39. That's pretty good. Wade's episodes on average are 7.14, and Mark, as a host, on the average gets a 7, a perfect 7. Very impressive. Is this anything to take into account? No. If for some reason Markiplier, Bob, or Wade were to see this, first of all, hi, I'm a big fan, but I don't have any wisdom to impart here about, oh, you need to host better. I can't do that. I think they're in a good spot right now, because as I look at the graph, I can, as a watcher, attribute a couple of things to it, like the time that Bob accidentally repeated the topic to an episode, which is like a big, you aren't supposed to do that, that's very funny, and it was about him getting older, which is, the dementia jokes lead very easily. There have just been some moments in the show, in the podcast, where big things have happened. Markiplier's tyrannical reign was one of them, because his podcast episodes, he was more concerned about the bit of, oh, I'm the host forever now. So he wasn't, I can't say he wasn't concerned about making his episodes the best to listen to or the funniest. He was just like playing on the joke, and therefore they get like 7s and 6s. Bob's coin flipping, at one point, about 7 episodes in a row, I can actually find out the stats for that, hold on. Coin toss curse, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 episodes in a row. They decided the winner by coin flip. And Bob lost every time. And this actually started with an episode that Mark hosted, where he would assign points based on a coin flip, and it never went Bob's way, leading to, I didn't count the amount of coin flips that Bob lost in a row. I'm pretty sure they have a number for that somewhere. But the point was, it was flip-flopping between Mark and Wade, and there were jokes being made about them running out of ideas, which led to a steady decline, like 7, 7, 6, 8, Markiplier pulled out an 8, then 6, 5, 6, and 7. You can see a steady decline as they literally ran out of ideas. And then another thing I could attribute it to was when they got all in their heads about having rules. Because apparently, on the subreddit for Distractible, God, I can't call it Markiplier, that's awful. On the subreddit for Distractible, they have opinions. A lot of opinions. And one of the opinions they had is that the boys should stop being so loosey-goosey with the host rules, because there was a practice of handshake deals and just a lot of things that were going behind the host's back or in front of the host's back to disrupt the rules of the show. And the rules were never that important to begin with, but nevertheless, the hosts, Bob, Mark, and Wade, listened, came together in a tribunal that I gave a 5 because it wasn't funny, it wasn't very interesting. It was just, we're gonna have rules now. And then for a while after that, they were a little slow to get back into their comedic groove because they set rules for themselves. I am gonna speak out against that, actually. I think they just should have kept being, like, even if it is mean to slip out the win from somebody or to have a secret rule that gives you secret points, even though the points are what you say they are, they're actually different points, and now there's a game within a game, and it's all very tricky. I don't think that's bad. I don't they're friends. They aren't strangers. Strangers aren't coming on every time. There's no real competition here. So I don't think the rules have to be that strongly followed. So if there was anything I take from this, it's that I think once they stop completely worrying about the rules again, they'll start hitting 10s again. Because we have not had a 10 for about a year. That happens. For a while, we also didn't have a 10 for like 6 months. 10s are rare. 10s don't happen often. I shouldn't say, hey, pump out only 10s. I'm just saying I think it would lead to more 10s if they set aside the rule book completely. So I mean, just look at this graph. Every time I do it makes me laugh. I think I'm gonna link it in the video so you can look over like how I rated everything. I don't know if anybody is exactly as passionate about this as I am. I assume at least 2 people are, because they're on the Reddit being absolute legends, marking down every time each guy wins, which is huge, incredible, helped me a lot for this exact thing. But yeah, just Distractible is the podcast. It's a cool one. It's a wonderful one, and I have spoiled almost none of it, and none of the humor of it, by making this video, which I think is really something. I think everybody should listen to it. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful podcast. And I am going to keep making this graph because I like to keep an eye on it. Right now they're cresting over a hill in terms of quality. I wish them many successful years of committing Distractible episodes, because I think there's a frankly infinite amount of episode ideas. And I mean, not truly. And they're going to stop eventually. And I know this and I understand this. Memento mori, everybody. But I think there's... this just reinvigorated my faith that they still have a lot of good episodes to make. They still have a lot of good quality content left in them, and it wasn't all at the front. Thank you for watching my autistic rant. Subscribe or something. I don't make these videos often, so don't even subscribe if you liked this. Bye-bye!